He retired in 1968 from the Royal Australian Air Force with the rank of Wing Commander. He'd been in the service for 24 years. He'd been in the roulette team. And in commercial aviation, he'd flown for Air Pacific, Royal Hong Kong, Auxiliary Air Force, Cathay Pacific, Republic of Sri Lanka Air Force, Air Atlantic Iceland, or Icelandia. Icelandic. We've got another gentleman in the audience today who was involved with them, and I've heard stories about Icelandic, and I think we should get them on their feet talking about it some other time. Kuwait Airways was another one on his list. Retired as a captain of a Boeing 747. But what he's going to be talking about today is the Huey helicopter and other choppers that he flew, but Huey's in Vietnam in 1968 to 1969. And so, Wayne, sometimes known as Noddy, I don't know where it came from. Maybe we'll learn one day. I've had the pleasure of looking at the PowerPoint show and doing a couple of tricks with it, but you're in for a treat today, so Nobby, over to you.
I just have to correct Brian on one minor point. I retired in 88, not 68. I should have retired in 68, because that's the year I went to Vietnam. Okay, my burst today, and thanks for inviting me along, is a little known story, but RAAF Helicopter operations in Vietnam, and undergoing the genesis and development of RAAF Helicopter operations. It was happenstance through necessity. Icons of the 20th century warfare, if I go through them, World War I was of course the tank. War II can arguably be the Spitfire. The Korean War was the Sabre jet. Vietnam was the Huey, the HU-1 helicopter. And the Cold War, of course, the defining war of the 20th century was the bomb. So happenstance through necessity becomes reality. RAAF Helicopter operations Vietnam 66 to 72, genesis and development. The genesis beginnings lay in happening upon a suitable platform. In the 1950s, the RAAF toyed with rotary wing operations more as a curiosity than for serious use. Aircraft used were the Bristol Type 171 Sycamore and the Sikorsky H-5 Dragonfly. The RAAF also assisted Army in introducing its first rotary wing aircraft, the H-13 Sioux helicopter. The Elvis Leonidas powered Bristol Sycamore up the top there, and this one's based at Woomera. And the Sikorsky H-5 Dragonfly, powered by a 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney 985, which Ronnie Peters knows so well. Powers a Windshield basic train. Meanwhile, the Americans were seriously pursuing rotary-winged aircraft as a viable military vehicle, albeit from small beginnings in World War II. And the first of these was the Sikorsky R4, which became the H4 Hoverfly. And here it is, hopefully going to pick up this poor beleaguered airman wallowing in unfriendly waters. Another developed was the Bell Helicopter Company, the precursor to the H-13 Sioux. Korea provided the first real test in action of the new vehicle. Rescue and medevac was seen as their primary use. But what about what about cargo carrying? Enter Sikorsky with a bigger helicopter in 1949, the Chickasaw H-9. Rather an ungainly looking craft, better known in British circles as the S-55 or the Westland S-55. Well, the engine is up the front here, canted with a big drive shaft going to a gearbox between the two pilots who sat above the cargo bay. A three-bladed main rotor with a tail rotor, anti-torque rotor, an ungainly beast. The H-19 Chickasaw, just after having dropped an external load. You can see these just dropping onto the top of the load. The problem of piston-engined helicopters was almighty ironmongery up front. It's an R1340, 600 horsepower Wright Cyclone engine. Piston-engined helicopters were underpowered. They weren't much good in hot, high areas. They were only good in cold, low areas. Korea wasn't too bad in the winter, so they just got bigger. And this is the S-58, or the Sikorsky 58 H-34 Choctaw. This was the basis for the Westland Wessex that the Royal Australian Navy operated for many years. And the problem just got bigger. Now we've got a Wright R1820 with 1,525 horsepower. A lot of ironmongery up the front. And here lies the problem. A helicopter has to develop maximum power in the hover. There is no induced airflow to cool the engine. So what cools the engine? That ruddy great ducted fan that just robs energy from the main drivetrain to the gearbox. Keep that engine cool, operating at maximum power in the hover. Still, it was unsatisfactory. So what to do? As the Arabs would say, ooh la la la. What to do? Perhaps a radical redesign. Now we've got both rotors heading in the right direction. The counter-rotating rotors cancel the torque effect, so you don't need that tail rotor down the back robbing more power from the drivetrain. Two rotors pointing the same way sounds like a good idea, but still the piston engine is a problem. And stability. These things were quite unstable. Normal helicopters basically unstable, statically and dynamically. These were a mongrel. That's the Piasecki H-21 Shawnee. They started off in Vietnam as the primary troop carrier. Or perhaps even bigger, and here we have a huge helicopter, the CH-37 Mojave, with two Pratt & Whitney R2800s. Those engines powered DC-6. I love the caption to this photograph here, sorry. Here we go, this photograph here. An H-37 Mojave attempts to recover an H-21 Shawnee. And have a look at the Shawnee. It is denuded of rotor blades, undercarriage, engines out. You can't get much lighter than that. But this is Vietnam, hot, humid, power problem. The law of diminishing returns. The more piston power you apply, the less performance you increasingly, proportionally get. But the answer was waiting in the rotors. Couple them to turbines. A newcomer, a new concept, a lightweight. Introducing the new guy on the block, the T53 series turboshaft engine. A wonderful little reverse flow gas turbine engine, which was radical for its concentric shaft that ran through from the power turbine right through the middle of the engine to the gearbox. Here is the compressor section, 5 stages axial, 1 stage of centrifugal to guard against compressor stall. The gas generator turbine, which ran the compressor, very compact with reverse flow through the combustion chambers and out through the turbines, and this reverse flow kept the engine relatively cool, so it was passively protected from infrared heat-seeking missiles. It also gave some protection against battle. A wonderful, wonderful little engine. What a concept. So now we can put the engine up where it should be, out of harm's way and not in front of the pilots where it's battle damage prone, but look at it back here, nice and protected, up behind lots of metalwork, and unobtrusive, get in the way of any shaft running straight through to the transmission, which is in what they call the hell hole down in here. First flight on the 20th of October 1956, a revolutionary aircraft, the world's first jet helicopter. Now in 1953, 20 manufacturers responded to the US Army request for proposals. 2 aircraft were chosen to compete for a medevac, instrument, trainer and utility role. Notice they're still heavy on the medevac and instrument trainer, utility light utility role. The H-43 Husky, which was produced by Messrs. Carman, and the Bell Huey. And that's where the Huey got its name, the HU-1. Huey. Thank God we picked the Huey, because the Carman Husky, the US Air Force had a lot of these as first response fire engines on fast jet bases. The rotors were all pointing the right way to get rid of that tail rotor, but have a look at the complexity of those intermeshing counter-rotating blades. And to see one in flight was just ungainly. It looked like an angry palm tree. They were just so bizarre. The Huey, conventional, with a tail rotor, but now we've got that lovely turbine engine. The more revs you put into a turbine engine, the better it operates and the more power you get, unlike the piston. And it kept the drivetrain and drive dynamics simple. And all of a sudden, the US Army realised they had a gym, and it got very, very busy. The HU-1 won the competition and entered service in 1961 with 700 horsepower. It showed immediate promise, but still underpowered. So the HU-1 was re-engined with a 960 shaft horsepower uprated model of the 253. The Army requested more capacity, so the prototype HU-1D flies in August 1961, and there's the Huey. Notice that he's got a longer cabin, able now to accommodate 9 troops or 7 troops and 2 gunners, plus 2 pilots up front. And there's that lovely compact power plant design with the transmission in a tunnel between the 2 gunners either side. Quite a handsome helicopter. A lot better looking than the S-55, if you can call helicopters handsome. The HU-1D again. And it got very, very busy. In 1962, the Huey B model entered service with an 1100 shaft horsepower engine. The Huey C and Tug, the Huey C Hog was the gunship, the Tug was a artillery piece transporter with a slung load, was under development with 1300 shaft horsepower. The US Army designated the HU series into the UH series, utility helicopter, and the UH-1D entered service in 1963 with the -11 1100 horsepower engine. The UH-1H entered service in 66 with 1300 shaft horsepower. Note the rate and rapid horsepower growth. Now we come to good old Ronnie RAAF. We placed orders for 8 HU-1 in 1961 and deliveries commenced in October 62. The role? Rapid response search and rescue for fast jet bases and assistance to the civil community. No inkling of military use at all. Our first Huey was A2384, delivered on the 29th of October 62. The potential of the Huey was readily evident, and Army latched onto this and said, hey, we want to play with those and see what we can do with them. To which we responded, and well, we painted them a decent Army type colour. Have a look at the difference. Silver and yellow for a RAAF rescue in a olive drab. Army says, yeah, we want a piece of this action, so a further 8 Hueys were ordered for delivery in 1964. And a further 8 were developed, ordered for 63 delivery, and another 8 now for 1964 delivery. Total now 24 Hueys. The fleet's growing very rapidly. 9 Squadron reformed in 1962 for the search and rescue role at bases. Experiments began with Army for development of joint ops expansion, and Number 5 Squadron reformed May 64 for operations with Army in Malaysia. We were still mopping up Chin Ping in his day. The 9 Squadron's motive is an albatross. An albatross head gorged by the astral crown. And its motto, Vidimus nec vidimur, gives the game away, see and don't be seen. 9 Squadron was an ex-fleet cooperation squadron. Embarked Sydney, HMAS Sydney, Perth and Hobart. What was the third cruiser? Sydney, Perth and, it doesn't matter. Anyway, they were embarked with Walrus seaplanes as the eyes of the fleet before the advent of radar. When radar came in, 9 Squadron was disbanded at Rathmines 1945, only to be reconstituted in 1962 for the sail role. 5 Squadron operations in northern Malaysia. This is up near Grit, the Thai border, with a B model Huey and the J in the background. The J. Number 5 Squadron was repatriated home to train crew, both air and ground, for Number 9 Squadron, which was on its way to Vietnam. Orders were placed for 8 UH-1D and 16 UH-1H helicopters. So now we've got a total of 48. 9 Squadron deployed to Vietnam in May 1966 with 8 UH-1B. It became operational on the 13th of June. A third batch of 8 aircraft delivered in late 1964 was shipped to Vietnam to support the 1 Australian task force arriving in June 1966. And there we are pictured on kangaroo pad at Nui Dam. Dear Staff Directive to the Commander in the field, not to be utilised in a situation which may incur asset loss. Sacre bleu. And this was a great rub point with Army. It took a long while for us to get this overturned. In fact, the Battle of Long Tan, the commander at the time, Peter Raw, had to inform the brigadier that he could not go to assist Army in their battle at Long Tan because of this order. And of course the brigadier blew his top. So the group captain said, well, I've got a way out of it, but I'll have to invite the aircrew up here to the operations room. And the brig said, do what you like. And so up came Frank Riley, and the group captain briefed him and said, listen Frank, it's on your shoulders. You've been issued the aeroplane as the operational commander of the day. I can't make a decision to go. It's your decision. And Frank said, we go. And the rest, as they say, is history. Now we go to the Army story. The Australian Army Training Team Vietnam was dispatched in August 1962. Then, in the escalation called upon by the new Prime Minister, Mr. Harold Holt, 1 Battalion Royal Australian Regiment was attached to the 173rd Airborne Brigade at US Army Base Bien Hoa, South Vietnam on March 1965. But we found interoperability just impossible with the Yanks. They were into big brigade shows, up the guts with tanks, bags and bags of smoke, and don't spare the ammo. We were used to company-sized sweeps and patrols against a fleeting enemy that we'd fought for now 15 years in the jungles of Malaysia and Borneo. So we were well versed in counterinsurgency warfare. The Yanks didn't have a clue. It was mass assault, mass bombardment, mass. We went small, so we just couldn't operate with them. So the Yanks spat the dummy and said, all right, we'll give you a province to look after. To set us back on our haunches. But no worries, old PM Holt all the way with LBJ, US gives Australia Phuoc Tuy province to neutralise. Phuoc Tuy. The Australian government announces the creation of No. 1 Australian Task Force in March 1966 to conduct operations pursuant to the denial of Phuoc Tuy province to the enemy in accordance with the dictums of the ANZUS Alliance and the CETO Accords. Wow. Cop this, young Harry. You don't want to play with our ball? We'll give you one of your own. And here we are, South Vietnam. The spine of Vietnam, mountain ridge right down the spine. The Ho Chi Minh Trail from North Vietnam right down through Laos, Cambodia, and into infiltration points all the way down. The Parrot's Beak area, nasty hot area. Phuoc Tuy, right here on the doorstep, the southeastern doorstep to Saigon. Once again a schematic with Phuoc Tuy province being shown right there, and there's Saigon. It was a mass infiltration route for the enemy into Saigon from the sea. Here is the Mekong Delta, so we were contiguous with the Mekong Delta. A nasty, nasty hot little area. We were part of the Military Assistance Command Vietnam Corps, the American Corps that was assisting the South Vietnamese Army to neutralise the activities of the Communists. And we were part of No. 3 Corps, sitting down here in our little province in Phuoc Tuy. And here we are, the 3 Corps Tactical Zone with Phuoc Tuy, Vung Tau, you've probably heard a lot about, Saigon here, the Mekong Delta. All this area here, very nasty badland. And home sweet home. Phuoc Tuy, right here, up to the north we have Long Tan Province, Binh Tuy, Binh Gia, misnamed the Rung Sat here, Bien Hoa, and No. 1 Australian Task Force, Nui Dat, right in the high diddle middle almost. We were based down here at Vung Tau, which was very pleasant, and drew a lot of angst from Army because they said, why should you chopper whackers be down there living in air-conditioned comfort and we're up here in the Ulu in the bush? And we said, well, you guys won't let us light up things at night to fix helicopters, and we've got to fix the helicopters at night because they're flying all day. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Army just don't understand air. They do not understand air. In fact, I'm probably going to get up somebody's nose here, but anything very, very technical, Army just don't understand. Get my drift? Okay, so the United States Army was reluctant to provide air assets in support of this isolated little Australian contingent down in Phuoc Tuy. We had to move. The Army required increased tactical airlift, at least half company lift. And that's 56 blokes. And we could do this with 8 Iroquois H-model helicopters. 9 Squadron, therefore re-equipped with H-models in February and July 1968, and I got up there just in time in July 68 to fly some beautiful brand new Hueys, and they were lovely. All of a sudden Ronnie RAAF had to get busy too, very, very busy indeed, because We're no longer search and rescue and aid to the civil community. We are now at war. So training began in earnest for VIP transport, logistics and personnel transport liaison. Those three top tasks, not much of a drama, but these ones are starting to get into the meat. Combat assault and command and control. Long-range reconnaissance patrol insertion and extraction. Crop spraying. Medevac, dust-off. Reconnaissance and sniffer missions. PSYOPs. Gunship attack helicopter operations. And forward air control for spotting military, artillery and fighter tactical bombing. Quite a big dense coast. Well, some explanation. The long-range reconnaissance patrol insertion was to do with SAS. SAS were the eyes of the army. 4-man, 5-man patrols would go out in the Ulu, 5 to 10 days, depending on the season. Dry season, 5 days because of lack of water. Wet season, stay out for 10. We'd have to put them in and bring them home as surreptitiously and quietly and sneakily as we could. And the tactic was command helicopter 2,500 feet out of small arms, navigating for an insertion helicopter down on the weeds, down in the trees. And we'd navigate him in to a pad, dispatch the SAS, then we go off and hold for about 20 to 30 minutes in an area well away from the insertion pad with 3 helicopters, 1 spare just in case things went belly up on the ground with the insertion helicopter. We'd hold for 20 minutes hoping that we wouldn't hear Albatross, Albatross, this is 0 Alpha, over. Oh, they're in contact. They're whispering. This is going to be a hot one. If it was hot, we'd have to navigate the extraction helicopter back into the pad and pick the boys up. If they were able to get back to the pad. If they weren't, it was a winch job, nasty. Crop spraying. Why crop spraying? The Viet Cong were all throughout the countryside. They had infiltrated villages and they used to garner food from the local villages. They used to grow their own crops of rice and we'd go out with crop spraying herbicides to deny them that food. Dust off, medevac, self-explanatory. Either landing at a pad or winch reconnaissance and sniffer. Every day we were roaming the province far and wide, so visual reconnaissance was very important. But we also mounted sniffer missions, which were olfactory intelligence gathering missions. We had a device we attached to the skids that used to sample the air. And the air sampling device would give us an indication of any gas mixtures in the environment that was due to human habitation. Carbon dioxide, ammonia, campfire smoke, stuff like that. The only trouble was the poor old monkeys used to put off the same sort of smells as we did, and the monkeys copped a bit of a caning. But a very valuable means of picking up intelligence because the jungle in Vietnam was just so dense. Primary, tertiary and secondary jungle, I mean it was just impenetrable. PSYOPs, one of the most spooky missions I ever flew was a mission 2 o'clock in the morning in drizzling rain, no horizon, with speakers hanging out the side of the aircraft, beamed down onto the jungle where we knew there was a hot spot with the voices of the ancestors. Taoism is very, very ancestor-based religion. And the voices of the ancestors telling the Viet Cong down underneath the jungle canopy, Chu Hoi, give up, your pursuit against the enemy is fruitless. And a few used to give up. But imagine circling in a helicopter with a buddy alongside you in formation, in drizzling rain, no horizon, flares coming up, floating down, and it was just eerie. If you reckon Apocalypse Now was eerie, this was, I honestly thought I was upside down. I got a severe case of the leans because of the changing light patterns with the flares drifting down. And I just said to my co-pilot, look after me, mate, I'm sure I'm upside down. And yeah, it's called the leans. Gunship attack, helicopter operations, and of course forward air control. All right, on we move. Here's a Huey on Kangaroo pad with Sass Hill in the background, the eagle's nest, and it's got spray bars. She's going on a crop spraying mission. Army in typical repose, looking very important, hands on hips, discussing matters of high dudgeon. We're probably up in the briefing hut getting briefed, getting the intelligence brief for the situation. Note the twin M60 door guns. Normally we only carried one M60 each side. This has got two. So we're going to a fairly hot area. Yeah, my first mission in Vietnam was a crop spraying mission. And you really drew the crabs. Yeah. The Viet Cong didn't like being denied their tucker. Here's a combat assault coming in. It's probably red section. And if you hold your right hand out in front of you, you'll see that that finger, the longest one, and the index finger, these two chaps here. The number 3 is back there and the number 4 is back there. This is what they call heavy right formation. Mimics the right hand finger. Trust me, I know a doctor. Of particular note here is the gunship team in support, the light fire team. Oops, here we go. There's the gunship leader covering the tree line here. There's number 2 covering the leader should he draw fire. And we have door guns facing the threat, and also door guns this side, of course. But plenty of firepower to bring to bear should we get into trouble. Medical evacuation. Oh, sorry, I'll just go back to this. We could carry 56 troops with 8 slicks, 2 sections of 4. 28 troops in each section. So that was the Army's half company lift requirement. And they wanted half company because that gave them the ability to defend on the ground while we built the medevac. Fire support base Coral. The battle at Coral was the second instance of the Viet Cong having a go at us, or the North Vietnamese, and it was a substantial defeat for the NVA, but we nearly lost some guns. This is the aftermath carrying our wounded out. We were able to land at this one. Our stock in trade was called hash and trash, or resupply. The poor old grunts here, that's their ration pack, sea rations, and we've just resupplied this outpost. Don't know what this bloke over here's doing, but but the rotor wash was a problem for the boys. Look at them. Look at them. They're hunkering down, and debris used to get blown everywhere.
He'd have been middle of these boats.
We were resupplying a fire support base we'd just set in place. The guns had gone in under Chinooks, and we were flying in heavy loads of ammunition and foodstuffs to get them going. And we had to land into wind. There was no other way around it. We were coming in with the collective under our armpit, maximum torque to break out a translation or come into hover over the pad. No room for error. You had to be in the wind. And I was unloading there, and this major stood on my skid and shouted through the window, "You'll have to come in the other way. You're blowing all my troops' hoochies over." I said, "Sir, I'm afraid we can't." He said, "Are you disobeying a direct order?" I said, "I'm afraid, sir, yes." "Right, I'll report this. What's your name?" "Okay, sir, you better get off now because I've got to go. There's another helicopter, very heavy, coming in right up my chuff, and if I don't go now, you'll have 2 helicopters to worry about." They just did not understand. Sacre bleu. Logistic support. These fellas are toting water, and water was a big problem in Vietnam. There was plenty of it around, but most of it was non-polar. Moving grunts, administratively or in combat assaults, it was a continuous task. And smoke thrown over. Okay, how did we identify where the soldiers were? We'd be about 5 minutes out and we'd call up. 0 Alpha, this is Albatross 01, over. Albatross 01, this is 0 Alpha, over. The Army protocols. 0 Alpha, this is Albatross, 3 minutes out, throw smoke, over. Albatross, this is 0 Alpha, smoke thrown, over. Albatross 01, roger, out. We'd fly in and we'd see the smoke, and they throw differing colours. And we had to identify the colour, which would tell us that that was the pad that we were looking for, and that was a group and was friendly. So we'd call up 0 Alpha, this is Albatross 01. I see purple smoke, over. Albatross 01, this is 0 Alpha, purple smoke thrown, over. Albatross 01 to 0 Alpha, roger, landing 2 minutes, out. Yeah, all quite convoluted. One day we called up and we could hear this firing in the background. Machine gun, automatic weapons fire. And called back, 1-1, this is Albatross 06, confirm pad secure. And all this firing in the background. Albatross 06, this is 1-1. Affirmative, bang, bang, over. Is it 1-1, this is Albatross 06, we can hear firing, over. Albatross 06, this is 1-1, don't worry, over, we're converting, over. Converting. These are Kiwis, Maoris. 1-1, this is Albatross 06, clarify, please, converting, over. Albatross 06, this is 1-1, yeah, we're converting, wounded in action to killed in action, over. Maoris. Yeah.
Wasn't their own men.
Okay, what have we got there? All right, supporting the tankies. The Centurion tanks were ridiculed when it was said that they were going up there, but they played a very important role, because what the Australian engineers did was dissect the province into areas by big, wide, what we call firestone trails, which not only denied cover for the enemy crossing them, but also gave us ready reaction routes for the tankies to rapid response. But they couldn't carry much, so we used to have to carry in their ammunition and water and food and fuel on the odd occasion. And they were pretty heavy on duty. The Huey taxi, a lot of very happy diggers there are about to board and go back to Nui Dat, and perhaps a bit of spot of R&R down at the back beach pool, the Harold Holt Memorial Pool. This diagram, or this photograph, is not one of our ships, but it's a US Army ship, and it's a PSYOPS ship. She's got the big speaker bank out the side, 25 to 3,500 watts of speaker power there, and that's right in your right ear hole. Wow. And the voices of the ancestors in a spooky night with flares and, oh my God. And I was upside down. A typical scene of Huey going down the mine, Huey on the job in Phuoc Tuy province. We used to call the mission inserting and extracting long-range reconnaissance patrol going down the mine, because it was virtually like going into a hole in the J. The J was so thick, and it blocked out all the light, all the sunlight, very, very dim light down the bottom of this down the mine. Here's a SAS long-range reconnaissance patrol about to be inserted, 4-man patrol. And this is them on the way back home, or after we've extracted them and brought them home. A very happy bunch of fellows. And one of the tricks the old SAS boys used to pull is if you were a virgin, that is, you had just inserted your first patrol and was involved in a hot extraction, they would invite you up to SAS Hill, which is very nice of them, and ply you with beer, then strip you naked and put you in a freezer for 1 minute, which wasn't very good. It's the longest minute I've ever had. Our first gunship experiment, and this was a HU-1B Ned Kelly. 2 M60s was the standard mount for a gunship. This has got also 2 fixed forward M60s and 7 folding fin 2.75-inch rockets, aerial rockets. That led to the Bushranger development, which was the UH-1H. Once again, we've got the 7-tube rocket launcher, 2 M60 machine guns either side, and this horrible machine here called the minigun. Wow, 4,500 rounds a minute from each side, 9,000 rounds of ammunition. So we're carrying quite a good quiver of arrows. This is Brian DeRue, who was instrumental in developing the Bushranger gun. And there she is in their final guise. We see the minigun, the door guns, and the rocket launcher. Minigun. And in action, note the gunner is leaning out the side, and he is also adding to the firepower by firing down the direction. This is a minigun run. And then, I love this photo. Look at this army guy drooling over the 2 M60s. At his feet is more firepower than 8 M60s, but he's drooling over these 2 machine guns, the minigun just ahead. And a Huey slick in typical pose out over the Ula. Troop lift, this time we're in heavy left with the leader up the front, number 2, number 3 and number 4. I must call the War Museum about the quality of their photos. On finals to the pad, you'll probably dimly see smoke in the distance here, and we're just on we're at number 2 in a formation going with this small pad. The office, pretty straightforward. Nice round dials, romantic round dials, not these flat screen plasma LCD TVs they look at these days. The cyclic stick had to be held at all times. One could not let go of it. That's why the captain always sits on the right-hand side of a helicopter. With the collective, you can let go of and manipulate switches on the top panel and the lower panel. But the cyclic, if you let go of that and there was any sort of slop in the control linkage to the rotor head, take up a rotating motion in sympathy with the rotor at 324 revolutions per minute and cream you. So you didn't let it go. Yeah, that's why helicopter pilots, captains on the right-hand side. And I don't know whether you can see it here, but the rudder pedals are inscribed with Bell Huey. Isn't that quaint? Isn't that sweet? Yeah, Bell Huey. Okay. Some of the armour plating that surrounded us, we had seat bottom armour underneath, and back armour and side armour. What about the front? Here's the side armour was a sliding plate. Front armour was a body, what we call a chicken plate, Kevlar moulded plate, about yay thick, very heavy. And I used to wear a flak vest as well, because if a round hit the chicken plate, shrapnel would go everywhere and up into your face, so flak vest would contain the shrapnel. But nothing for the lower limbs, because out the front was all light aluminium and plexiglass. Here's one of our birds that was shot down by small arms fire, being rescued by a big cousin from the Americans, a CH-47. And yes, we had a heart for our grunts. This is Christmas time, 1969, yeah, delivering the Christmas cake to the soldiers in the field. How sweet. We had some light-hearted moments too. Farewelling Jeff Kendall here, he was to be awarded a DFC. Yours truly, Alan Adamson, Graham Downs, Kiwi Wells, DFC. John Sampson, Johnny Landale, and Pete Davies, DFC. Pete died in a Mackie crash up at Gin on the 20th of August 1970. He and his student ploughed into the ground for reasons that are not fully understood, and both were killed in that accident. Huey driver, Lieutenant Andy Craig, a bit of a legend this boy. Look at those eyes, that steely stare, that jutting jaw, eh? A good-looking chap. Andy was with the EMU flight, the 135th Assault Helicopter Company with the US Army. We had several Royal Australian Navy guys join the US Army in the Experimental Military Unit, or EMU, and that was their call sign. Their motto, very Australian, and I don't know who coined it, but get the bloody job done. Andy crashed while operating with the EMU flight, the 135th Assault Helicopter Company, recuperated in hospital and asked to come back, but he came back to 9 Squadron to complete his tour. Huey hero, Flight Lieutenant Frank Riley, I've already mentioned him once, Distinguished Flying Cross, a hero of the Battle of Long Tan. He was the boy that made the decision to go and pulled Army out of a very, very nasty situation that they themselves got themselves a company out unsupported, knowing from intel that there was a large force coming down from the northeast. And as you well remember, the 18th of August 1966, the Battle of Long Tan, little Patty was just singing her first few notes when the guns opened up. And thank God for the New Zealand gunner who called in the shots. The accuracy was incredibly good. And we lost 22, but estimated killed 2,500 enemy. It was a big hiding for the Viet Cong. They only came at us again once very seriously, and that was Coral, and that was another hiding. But they were trying us on. And a gunship gunner. He's on a gunship port side with the twin M60s. Our last mission was flown the 19th of November 1971, and the departure from Vietnam was made on the HMAS Sydney for the trip home 8th of December 1971. So Gough Whitlam's pulling the troops out is all bolted. The squadron's new home for the next 18 years was to be RAAF Base Amberley in Queensland. To be taken over by Army in 1989. Great tragedy. Statistics. While we were there with our small band of brothers and helicopters, 58,000 hours flown, nearly 250,000 sorties, 7 aircraft were lost, Nearly 500,000 passengers carried and 37 aircraft damaged, 23 by enemy action. We picked up nearly 4,500 medevacs, a lot of them winch, lost 6 aircrew, and we carried over 12,000 tonnes of freight. Ordnance expended, over 15 million rounds of 7.62 ammo. The minigun chewing up 4,500 rounds a minute each. That mounted up very rapidly. Rockets 29,285, and aircraft availability amazingly 83%, 13 out of 16. And another patrol returns. The Albatross 02 mission with the patrol aboard, Albatross 01, Albatross 03, the support ship. And that, folks, just about runs me out of ideas. Did I have personally? Around about 1,500.
All on choppers apart from
No, I'd done a tour on C-130s, and they saw me having so much fun getting an overseas trip every month, and broke as a badger, pilot officer, not a worry in the world. I said, right, you're having too much fun, young fella, go and fly a helicopter and go to Vietnam.
How many sorties did you fly in Vietnam?
Me personally?
Yes.
3,820 odd. Yeah. 880 hours I flew. Quite a busy year. There are lots of entrenched ideas out there in amongst the Army, and yeah, you've got to read a few histories to pick up on on what really went on, because Army puts out a lot of nasty propaganda at times. We're as pure as the driven snow. I mean,
well, the papers seem to have the Air Force at fault.
Yeah, and that's our own damn fault, because we don't fight it. Yeah. The Army have legions and legions upon legions of blokes on the ground writing staff papers. We haven't got that manpower. But if you want a definitive study of the Battle of Long Tan, this is the Battle of Long Tan told by the commanders to Bob Grandin, who was Frank Riley's co-pilot. And you can't get closer to the truth than that. Dr. Bob Grandin. Get it, read it, it'll expose the Army for what they are. Yes, and the fellow that led the Army at Long Tan, Harry Smith, was only recently recognised for his bravery. He got a military cross after the battle because the Army wanted to cover up the significance of the battle. They couldn't award a VC, and he should have got a VC. Another interesting book I've just finished, Ghost Platoon. Have a read of it. My God, the cover-up.
When say a flight of 4 Hueys is going into one of those small pads, what you call down the mine,
yeah.
You land one and then he departs, the next one comes in?
No, the pad was usually big enough for that sort of assault to land 4 on or even 8 on. And my final trip in Vietnam, I was given the honour of leading the largest combat assault ever mounted by the Royal Australian Air Force with 12 helicopters we landed on.
Noddy, thank you very much for your stories today. I can't help but think back to when this group first started. I knew very little about World War II, and through coming here I've learned more and more, and now I think I've got some reasonable understanding. Up until today I had very little, if any, understanding of what went on in Vietnam. It's opened my eyes, and I'm sure all of you have enjoyed it. Quick next, we've got Rob Vaughan Johnson hiding over there. Rob's going to move those next. Rob had a bit of time in helicopters too, if you remember. I remember seeing a photograph of a crocodile leaping off the ground to try and get to his helicopter.
That crocodile was a leopard.
Oh.
It's fallen to me to say thank you to our speakers today. As usual, Brian has found people who just blow our brains away with the stories that they have to tell. So I won't enlarge on details. I think we should show our appreciation.